it's Miss Meyer, and we're ready for another episode of the Miss Meyer Show. Today, we are going to be talking about the Declaration of Independence and the American Revolution. So get ready, because here it comes. Geronimo, say, Geronimo, say, Geronimo. All right, so the Declaration of Independence, you guys remember, is that we were trying to get away from Great Britain. And in actuality, it probably would never have happened if Great Britain wouldn't have really ticked us off with all of those acts and taxes that they put on us. But they had, and they had given us a lot of grievances, made us angry. It got to the point where we couldn't handle it, and the people, the colonists, decided that their only plan of action would be to declare independence, to break away completely, to form their own country. Well, the first Continental Congress, which we talked about last time, was where they came up with the idea of writing this Declaration of Independence. They didn't know how to go about doing it. Remember that they were trying to declare independence from like the mamma jamma, the big bad dog, England. How were they going to do that? They didn't know what they were going to do, how it was going to say, what was it going to sound like. It was just, they didn't know. They really didn't know. Well, the Second Continental Congress, they met in Philadelphia in 1776. 1776 is a big year. Remember, if you're going to remember a year, because I'm not really good with dates, I'm really not. I'm not good with dates. I'm really, if I forget your birthday, I'm sorry. But thank you, God, for Facebook, because it tells me when people's birthdays pop up. Otherwise, other than my children, I'd forget everybody's. But anyway, so in 1776, the government, wasn't even really our government, it was a group of people met in Philadelphia. Because remember, Philadelphia, Boston, Massachusetts, all these places, Philadelphia especially, and Boston really too, were the big areas. This is before Washington, D.C. even existed. So these places, Philadelphia and Boston, were like the hub of activity. This is where all of the historical stuff was going down. It was happening in these places. Well, these guys met in Philadelphia, and they created a document that would declare the freedom of the 13 colonies from Great Britain. That's what it was. And it was like declared their freedom. Now, this was treason, y'all. This was an act of treason. And if we lost this war, those people who signed the Declaration of Independence, they were going to be killed for treason. They would be murdered. They would be killed because it was a big crime to have treason against the crown, against the British crown. Well, a lot of people were really kind of nervous about writing this Declaration of Independence. And at the Second Continental Congress, they had assigned a 5-person committee. It's assigned a 5-person committee, 5 people, to kind of work on this Declaration of Independence. Although it was penned by Mr. Jefferson. Hello, Mr. Jefferson. We're talking about your great work of art. Monticello. No, we're talking about the Declaration of Independence. I hated writing the Declaration of Independence. I hated it. They conned me into writing it. I know, Mr. Jefferson, but that is your biggest accomplishment in today's world. Monticello! That is my accomplishment. The library at Monticello! Well, Thomas Jefferson obviously did not care to write the Declaration of Independence. In fact, he didn't think he could do that good of a job. But John Adams and Benjamin Franklin really persuaded him to do that. But at the end of Thomas Jefferson's life, if you would have asked him what his greatest accomplishment was, he was not going to say the Declaration of Independence. He would have said his library or his estate at Monticello. That was it. That's the way it was. All right, so Thomas Jefferson wrote this declaration. Now, he wrote it, and it was just a draft. The original declaration that we see today is not exactly word for word what Thomas Jefferson said. There was a committee put together to kind of establish it. And the people that worked on that committee were Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Robert Livingston, and Roger Sherman. Nobody ever hears about those 2 people, huh? They're like, Livingston? Sherman? Well, there is a Livingston Parish in Louisiana, but it's not that Robert Livingston that it's named after. But still. So they worked together to do this. So Thomas Jefferson wrote up kind of like a rough draft. He gave it over to Ben and Rob and Bob and John And Tom, he was Tom. And they all looked it over and they picked and chose exactly what little pieces they were going to leave in the Declaration and what they were going to change. Well, Thomas Jefferson, when he wrote this Declaration of Independence, he really did not agree, especially big time, with two people that were really in his ear, buzzing in his ear. One was John Adams and the other one was Alexander Hamilton. See, Thomas Jefferson truly believed that the states should have more power, that it should not be one centralized government. But at this time, they're only writing a declaration declaring themselves independent. They're not going to worry about the future of their country at this point. But at this writing of the Declaration of Independence, we really see a coming forward of ideas on how to run our country. And we start to see clashes, especially between Hamilton, Adams, and Jefferson. Big time. Now, the Congress took this draft of the Declaration of Independence. They, like I said, they picked and chose what they wanted, and they ratified it. They adopted it on July 4th, 1776. And that is what we call Independence Day. Oh, say, can you see? Thank you, Uncle Sam. Right? Okay, so the Independence Day is when we declared our independence from Great Britain. A lot of people don't even know that. They're like, Independence Day, that's when we fought the Revolutionary War. No, that's when we declared our independence. That's when we officially adopted the Declaration of Independence. Officially. And watch this cool clip right here.
Chamber will now come to a vote on the resolution proposed by Mr. Lee. That these colonies are, and of a right ought to be, free and independent states, and that all political connection between them and the country of Great Britain is, and of a right ought to be, totally dissolved.
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire votes yes.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island votes yes.
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts votes yes.
New York.
New York has yet to receive new instructions from its constituent assembly. We therefore respectfully abstain.
Connecticut.
Connecticut votes yes.
New Jersey.
New Jersey votes yes.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania votes yes.
Delaware.
Delaware votes yes.
Virginia.
Virginia votes yes.
Maryland.
Maryland votes yes.
North Carolina.
North Carolina votes yes.
South Carolina.
South Carolina votes yes.
Georgia.
Georgia votes yes.
The vote stands. 12 for independence, none against, with one abstention. The resolution carries.
All right. Now, declaring rights. And this is something, I just love this. I love this part. I love reading this part of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths. I'm going to read it to you. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Basically what it's saying is that when the government starts to act up and is no longer working for the people, then the people have the right to change it. That's what the Declaration of Independence basically says. It was to justify the purpose of it was for the purpose of justifying. The Declaration was for the purpose of justifying the separation of the colonies from Great Britain. That's what it was. It was saying, listen, George, we're leaving. We're going. All right? Bye. Bye. Okay? We're leaving. And this is why. Don't get all upset. Hopefully you'll let us go peacefully, but we're going to form our own country. You go stay over there in Europe. We're going to stay here. This is why we're leaving. Okay? It stated the main purpose of a government was to protect its people and to do right by them. And the colonists did not feel that they were getting a fair share. They weren't feeling as though they were, the king was doing right by them. And in fact, he wasn't. And there we go. All right. Well, I did have the microphone hanging around my neck, but I think I was hearing a little bit of difficulty hearing myself, so I'm going to use it through here because I think it might be louder. So the whole purpose of this declaration was to, like I said, justify the separation from England. What it said was that a government's purpose was to protect its citizens, and the patriots, the colonists, did not feel that King George and England was doing a very good job of doing that. They said that a government runs solely based on the consent of the governed. This consent gives a government that's authority and can be revoked at any time if a government does not work to represent its people. And that's basically saying, listen, government, King George, Parliament, England, you work for us. You're here for us. You're here for your citizens. And if you are not going to be a good fit for us, if you're going to hurt us and not help us, then it is within our rights to revoke it, to get rid of you, and to get and do something else. Well, in this situation, they were going to get rid of England and get rid of Parliament and form their own country. That was the principle that what our country was standard, what we were established on. It was also saying that people have the right to overthrow the government and to rebel if the government fails the people that it governs. And these, like I said, this was treason. To speak out against Great Britain like this was pure treason. I mean, no one talks to King George like this. No one. So these people had to have a lot of guts to do this. Okay? In this way, the Declaration really illustrated the growing American support of what we call republicanism. And that has nothing to do with the Republican Party and the Democratic Party or anything to really do with politics. Republicanism is a philosophy of limited government with elected people serving the will of the people. That's what it is. It's a concept that states only legitimate government is the one that's based on the consent of the people. Meaning, basically, you need to elect someone to speak on your behalf. You see, King George was born into the role. He was born to be king. Well, the Declaration of Independence said that's not going to work for us. The only kind of government that we are going to adhere to is the one that represents the people. It's based on our consent, who we say should govern us. That is what republicanism means when I'm talking about it here. Republicanism, in the sense of this test, means that the people have given the consent of someone to represent them, to govern them. Remember this. It is a philosophy. It's a thought. of limited government, small government, with elected representatives, meaning someone that you chose to be in office, serving at the will of the people. King George was born king. Nobody elected him anything. So republicanism, in the sense of what we're talking about now, is totally having to do with elected officials. Okay, that's what it means at this point. Now, a lot of the terminology and a lot of the thoughts, especially with Thomas Jefferson too, in writing the Declaration of Independence, were really taken from a guy named John Locke. Okay? Now, John Locke was an Enlightenment thinker. Enlightenment at the time, this was a long time ago. Well, not really that long ago. Well, it was a long time ago for us, but during Thomas Jefferson's time, it really wasn't that long ago. During the Enlightenment, when you think of someone who was enlightened, like, oh, that's an enlightenment. So John Locke was a writer during this period of time, and it was called the Enlightenment because this is when people started to discover new things and learn new things, and art and music and books and history and science and medicine, all these moments were happening, okay? So John Locke was this guy, and he had this philosophy that everyone was equal. Because in medieval Europe, especially, or even during this time, when they were 1776 in England, there was a huge hierarchy. And that hierarchy was based on your birth. You know, if you were born into a wealthy family, you lived a well-to-do life. If you were born in a really, middle-class kind of working family, that was your lot in life. If you were born to a poor family, that was it. That was your lot in life. People really couldn't marry someone from a different social class. It just wasn't heard of. And, people just accepted it. They felt that, okay, this is the role that I was born to play, and that's what it is. The poor farmer's daughter didn't marry the nobleman's son. It just did not happen. It really, really didn't. But during the Enlightenment, I just love doing that. That period, John Locke said, and he's this guy, he said, you know what? Everybody's the same. I believe that all people are entitled to life, liberty, freedom, justice, happiness, not just the very rich. Also, there was a guy during this time period in 1776. His name was Thomas Paine. That was his name. You see, but John Locke, you're thinking L-O-C-K, and Paine, P-A-I-N. No, it's P-A-I-N-E, and Locke is L-O-C-K-E. That's just the way it is. Well, Thomas Paine wrote this pamphlet called Common Sense. It's kind of like a blog post. So you ever read like a blog? I'm such a nerdy teacher mom. I follow this blog called Natural Mama. I do. And then she writes stuff about like natural living, because some of you may not know this, but some of you may, but I am a vegan. That means that I don't eat any meat, any dairy, any eggs, butter, cheese, milk, eggs, any meat, none of that. I don't eat any of that. So she gets lots of recipes and things like that. I'm like this crunchy kind of lady. I like lots of natural stuff. So I'm a weirdo. I also follow another blog called Wellness Mama. She's another one. So I do their blogs I follow. Well, before, in 1776, they didn't have blogs. But if they did, Thomas Paine would have been writing one. So what he wrote was this pamphlet, like kind of this blog thing, this long... Sorry guys, I had to come in the front room and switch cameras and such because my 2-year-old took a butter knife out of the dishwasher and started beating my 13-year-old daughter with it. So I had to come in here and kind of play mama. So I'm very sorry. We had to switch screens. Okay, so going back to this, and we're going to continue talking about Thomas Paine. So Thomas Paine, he wrote this pamphlet called Common Sense. And his pamphlet also was very similar to John Locke's in the effect that it really attacked the wrongdoings of the English monarchy. It said that everyone has the right to happiness, to freedom of speech, to thoughts and ideas, and it doesn't matter if your mama's a duchess or if your mama washes the clothes down the street. Everyone has that ability, and that's what common sense said. Now, in the Declaration, what it really did was it helped to get the colonists together, kind of like rally them together and, to make them feel like one, okay? It brought them together. After I know that 9/11 was horrible, and I don't know if any of you were probably not even born yet, but when 9/11 happened, what it did was, it really rallied the American people together. We all felt as one. We felt proud to be Americans. People were huge support of the military, support of the president. We were just, there were American flags everywhere. And the American Revolution kind of did the same thing. You see, all these colonists, when they were going into these, little, into their colonies, they weren't states yet. Well, they're kind of. Well, we'll call them colonists. They didn't really feel as though they were one group. I mean, they were all considered English, but they really kind of considered themselves Massachusetts or, New Jerseyism or New Yorkers. They would never consider themselves really as one unified front. And even once the revolution was over, it kind of went back to that. But what the Declaration of Independence did was get them together. It gathered everybody together, and they were like, yeah, woo! I'm telling you, because after 9/11, everybody was, we weren't Democrats, we weren't Republicans, we weren't Caucasian, we weren't African American, we weren't Protestant or Catholic, we were Americans. And that's what the American Revolution did for the colonists. And I'm freezing up big time here. I'm not on my computer. I am on my computer now. Okay, guys, switching cameras again because now my computer is freezing up. So I hope you're not all distracted. You're going to be like, Miss Meyer, how many times are you going to switch the cameras? I apologize. It's because my computer is not like me. I'm going to declare independence from my computer. I'm listing the grievances from my computer. So, the principles of the Declaration of Independence, like I had said before the computer stopped freezing, really got the people of America together. They were no longer, they always were, but they visualized themselves as not being from Massachusetts or from New York or from New Hampshire. They saw themselves as patriots, as independent states who were declaring themselves freedom from Great Britain. Okay? So the principles of the Declaration have been influential, to American history and have served for inspirational social movements, including the abolitionist movement, which ended slavery, the women's rights movement and giving the women the right to vote, and the civil rights movement of the 1960s. So our Declaration of Independence, and I've actually seen it in Washington, D.C., which you can see it too. It's still there. It's unbelievable. It's in these airtight containers, and they have guards stand outside. Can't take any flash photography in there. And if something happens, the documents go in ground, say they're like this, and say this is the document, and it's you're looking at it, because it's thick glass looking at it. And if something's going on, I don't know, something horrible or something, the documents automatically go underneath this vault, deep, so nothing happens to them. And that vault can withstand an atomic blast. It's crazy. All right, but the Declaration of Independence is still so important today. It may have been written, over 200 years ago, but it's still very important to the people and America today. So the main thing that we did in that declaration, like I said, was to list our grievances, to say why we were so upset with King George. And remember, a large portion of the declaration included a list of big complaints that we had against the British government. The purpose of this list was to show Britain that this is why we're mad. I'm telling you guys, you probably don't know this, but I'm sure your parents can tell you that one day when you get married, especially women, your husband might say, why are you angry? What's the reason? Why are you so mad? And then you have to kind of say, I'm mad because of this, and this, and this. and this, because they just don't understand. My husband at least doesn't get the whole picture. He's like, I don't understand why you're so mad. And I'm like, hello, because there's a dead bird, and this is a truth story. There's a dead bird by my trash can outside, okay? It is a dead bird, and I do not like to see the dead bird because in Texas, it's been over 105 degrees some days, and when I go out there, the dead bird is decomposing with maggots eating him, and he stinks really badly, and I don't want to see that. So I keep telling him, go get a shovel and get the dead bird, get it away. Well, he says, oh, I keep forgetting. Well, it's making me crazy. And he was asking me, why are you so mad? I'm like, because of the bird. The bird is still there. Now there's a bunch of flies all over the bird. And when we open the garage door, they come Anyway, so Great Britain, basically America was doing the same thing. It was telling Great Britain, this is why I'm mad. Because of the heavy taxes. Because of the lack of colonial representation in Parliament. Because of the unfair tax laws. Because of the seizure of the American ships and cargo and the closing of the Boston Harbor. For requiring the colonists to hold British troops in their house. Because part of the Quartering Act, which was part of the Intolerable Acts, which I love that word, intolerable. I'm going to say that all the time now. My original favorite word was phenomenon, but I like intolerable as well. Anyways, part of the Intolerable Acts was the Quartering Act. And this was kind of crazy because King George made it a law that the colonists had to allow British soldiers to stay at their house when they were, camping in the colonies. After the Boston Tea Party, King George was really ticked at America, and he sent a lot of troops over here to kind of watch and make sure we're, doing what we're supposed to do. So he didn't have anywhere for these guys to stay. He didn't have a barracks or something like that. So he needed somewhere for these soldiers to stay. So he put in place called the Quartering Act, and it made the people, the colonists who lived in the colonies, have to take care of these soldiers. And these people weren't rich. They weren't wealthy. They didn't have a lot of stuff. So these soldiers would come into their house, sleep in their beds. They'd kick them out of their own beds, eat all their food, steal money sometimes, and do some really terrible things. And it was part of the law. They had to do that. And if the colonists were upset and didn't like it, one of the rules with the Intolerable Acts was that people couldn't have a fair trial because colonists had to sometimes go get tried even in England. So if you've had British soldiers that come over to your house and eat your food and steal your goats and cows and pigs, who are you going to go tell? The royal governor? You think he's going to be on your side? I don't think so. So that, in fact, was one of the other grievances. The last grievance was the lack of jury trials. These people had no one to talk to. They would say, oh well, no big deal. So these were all issues, and this is why we declared our independence, why we had the bravery and the courage to really become independent from one of the biggest nations ever. These little 13 colonies decided that they were going to rise up against the biggest empire in the world at that time. And that is truly why we are the land of the free and the home of the brave. I mean, for real. I will see you guys next time on the Miss Myers Show when we talk more about the American Revolution. I can't speak today. It must have been all the changing of different spots. So long from the Miss Myers Show. I will see you guys in class. Bye.
And do the Harlem Shake.
Hey.